Welcome, Heather and Mike and Jalissa and Radwinder and Garkash, Antonia and Highborn. Thanks for coming. This is the week 4 webinar. And we have some nice stuff to do. I don't think it's so brutal this week. I should warn you though, the class gets a little harder at the end. It's not too brutal, but it does get a little harder as we go. But today's not too bad. I don't think most people don't. But we'll see. Let me explain where our plan is today. Let me share screen so I can get to my agenda. Here we go. Okay, the plan is we'll start out by, we're going to look at signed numbers. So with the stuff that happens, it may feel like negative numbers aren't very important, but it turns out they do come up in a lot of different situations. So we're going to look at kind of arithmetic, signed numbers. We'll start with addition. Then we'll look at subtraction. We'll look at multiplication and division. And just kind of get that straight, a little review. Again, stuff that you may not have played around with in a long time. We'll also talk about how to, drop it in a calculator. I'll even mention something that is an issue at the T84, because there is an issue. And then after that, we'll talk about midpoints. So midpoints come up a huge amount of time in statistics. So even though it just looks like one little item, it's a little big item, let's put it that way. And the plan is we're going to be looking at midpoints. And then number 5, we're going to get into statistics applications of all this stuff. So we're going to look at how signed numbers and midpoints are used. I think you muted yourself. Maybe. Okay, and I want to let you know if you want to talk, just please talk. But I wanted to make sure that if you got background noise or something, it's always a good idea to mute yourself. So there's lots of applications of both signed numbers and midpoints. So we're going to be talking about them. And a big piece of this class is to get used to the vocabulary of statistics. The big topics that come up in stats. And it's just basically an excuse to go through the vocabulary, to go through the signed number, arithmetic, and midpoints. So we'll talk about the uniform distribution. We'll talk about the normal distributions. We'll talk about confidence intervals and hypothesis testing. All this stuff, these are like whole weeks of the stats class. The more you see ahead of time, the better chance that you'll be prepared and you'll do well in your statistics class next quarter. Remember, that's what this is about. So let me ask you, are there any questions about anything? Again, a big part of this webinar is for you to be able to kind of have real-time Q&A time. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Has it gone pretty well for y'all so far? In terms of doing the homework, being able to access the book, getting help when you need it, whether it's from me or the tutors? Oh, good. I'm glad it's helpful. And I'm here to help a lot. I am online more than I ever want to be because I don't know about you all, but we're stuck. So I'm just staring at my computer way more than is healthy, which means that if you ever have questions, I'll unless I'm sleeping, or hiking, by the way, I do a lot of hiking. There's a good chance I'll get back to you right away. So, please ask me questions whenever you need it. And oh, good, I'm glad you're thinking the book is helpful. Oh, by the way, I should mention, I don't think I mentioned this before. It may happen, may not happen. If you find any mistakes in the book, even like, just little grammar errors, I should have put a comma here when we didn't, please let me know. Because, I wrote it and I can fix it and then I can make it better for everyone. There are literally thousands and thousands of people using it now. And so if you can, find a little error and let me know about it, then you're helping 1,000 people, maybe 20,000 people, maybe even 100,000 people. And at least my philosophy is there's nothing better in life than being able to help 100,000 people. Okay, that's my philosophy of life. So if you can and let me know of any mistakes you find in the book or the homework, by the way. I didn't write all the homework, but I wrote some of it, and I led the writing of the homework. If you find any mistakes, or even something that's a little confusing, let me know and I can reword it. So that's just a note. Please, you know, kind of help everybody. It's a way to help the world, which is always a good thing in life. Any questions? Any questions or suggestions? Okay, so if there's no suggestions, I guess I should get to do some math. So the first thing is, let's talk about sign numbers. And hopefully you all know that there are numbers less than 0. Okay, again, I don't to assume anything in this class, but you probably know there's numbers less than 0, right? And the numbers come up in different places. Where, maybe pop the chat box or say it, where might you see negative numbers? Where might you see them in the real world? And they happen. Hopefully not your bank account, by the way. But where might you see them? Any thoughts? Because they come up, and they come up in statistics a lot. I'm not hearing you all jump in. Okay. Well, if I don't see you, let me tell you where one of the big things they come up in statistics. A big part of statistics is doing comparisons. And you might want to do a comparison on, let's say, I don't know, how fast a coyote goes and how fast a mountain lion goes. Okay, and you might want to say, who goes faster, a mountain lion or a coyote? And by the way, I have no idea, so don't quote me any of this. Okay, so yeah, Michael got a good idea. Temperature is definitely a negative number. And I mean, not always a negative number, but living in Tahoe, often a negative number, especially in the winter, not lately, especially if you're doing degrees in centigrade, Celsius. So if you're ever out of this country, any time is below freezing, that's negative in Celsius. But let me give you some examples that come up in stats in a big way. So let's suppose you want to find out the difference between coyotes and mountain lions in terms of how fast they go. And you don't know who goes faster. I don't know who goes faster. Maybe you all do. So sorry if I'm, you know, ignorant and dumb, but I really don't know. They're both pretty fast. So you might look at a variable and say, let's let x be the distance or the difference. And that would be, let's say, coyote speed minus mountain lion speed. Could that be negative? What do you think? Is it possible for that to be negative? Yeah, it definitely can negative. And in fact, what does it mean for it to be negative? What does it mean for it to be negative? Yeah, it means the mountain lion is faster, okay? Which might be true. Again, I don't know. So please, please don't, say that I told you that this animal's faster. I don't know who's faster. They're both damn fast. They're both faster than me. I know that. Okay, so if that's the difference, then what you might do is you might want to do a study. And let's say you did a study and you found out that the mean, by the way, do you know what the other word for mean is? The common word for mean? And not evil, by the way, not that kind of mean. Yeah. So that's a very important word in stats. So I'm going to be using it a lot. So the mean, let's suppose it was, I don't know, negative 8 miles per hour. Again, I have no idea. So please don't, get mad at me if this is not true, because I don't know how fast I go. Let's suppose that the mean of the coyote speed minus mountain lion speed is negative 8 miles per hour. Okay, well, guess what? Now we got to deal with negative numbers. And negative numbers happen. And they happen in statistics, especially when you're doing comparison studies between one thing and another thing. And that could be maybe gender comparison studies, where you're looking at, men versus women. You might want to do, I don't know, men's average test score minus women's average test score. And that may be negative. Maybe women do better. Who knows? But it comes up a lot. And in stats, I would say almost every time it comes up, it's a difference of two different things when we're looking at average differences. Any questions on that? Okay, so now I'm going to jump out of applications. We'll get to the applications at the end, and let's get back into math. So let's suppose we wanted to add two numbers. And let's suppose the numbers are both negative. We want to go -3 plus -5. Who remembers how to add those numbers in your head without a calculator? Anyone remember that? And if you don't, that's okay, but if you do, chime in. Yeah, so if they're the same signs, so let's write this out in words. I like what you said. Is it if the numbers are both negative, ignore the negative. I'm going to say it in a little longer words than you do. Add, and then put the negative back on. Okay, any questions on the instructions on what to do when you're adding two negatives? Okay, so then you say, all right, what is 3 plus 5? And that I hope you can all do. What's 3 plus 5? Maybe you can't all do it. I don't see all jumping in. Yeah, 3 plus 5 is 8. Okay, so 3 plus 5 is 8. So -3 plus -5 is equal to -8. It's as simple as that. There's not much to it. Again, today is not meant to be the evil day. I hope you don't feel like this is evil. But it's a little review. A lot of you probably haven't done this in a long time. So I think it's a good idea to get back to basics sometimes. And notice I used that -8 we had before. It's just not a coincidence, just for fun. So any questions on adding two negative numbers? Not too bad? Okay, what about it? So we're still in addition. Maybe I'll make that bold so we know that that's what we're looking at now. So if the numbers have different signs, okay, that's going to be different. Okay, then we're not going to just ignore the negatives and then add them and put the negative back on. That doesn't work. Then what you do is ignore the negatives, subtract the smaller from the larger, and the smaller from the larger once you've ignored the negatives. And then the bigger number gets its sign. So let's do an example. Let's say we want to say 4 plus -9. So now we look at this and we say, aha, I'm adding two numbers. I'm adding two numbers. One of them is positive, one of them is negative. So the first thing we do is just subtract. So the first thing is we go 9 minus 4, right? The big minus the small. And hopefully you can all do that. What's 9 minus 4? Yeah, that one's 5. Hopefully that's an easy answer. I'm trying not to be evil. I could have gone, 3.725 minus 8.923. But I don't know, that's just calculator work. So I want to kind of show you what's going on, and that's important. Okay, then what you do is you say, which is bigger? 9 is bigger, right? 9 is bigger than 4. The 9 is the one with the negative. Do you see that? So the bigger one was negative. So that means that I take that 5 and I make it -5. Any questions on that? Okay, I could do another example. How about -3 plus 12? Let's see if you can do that one. See if you can do it. Okay, most of you have it, but let's work this out. Okay, so the first thing again is we go ahead and we say, well, let's do 12 minus 3. We do a subtraction. Notice one is positive, one's negative. That means we have to subtract. And 12 minus 3 is 9. I think everyone did that in their head well. And then we say, which is bigger, 12 or 3? 12 is bigger. And then we look at that 12. The 12 was the positive number. So that means the 9 stays positive, and that's the answer. Any questions on this idea so far? Addition. Okay. So if you have signed numbers, then these are the two rules. So if they're both negative, again, ignore the negative, add them up, and switch the sign. Make it negative. If one is negative, one is positive, then we take the larger minus the smaller, get the number, then you analyze, is the larger negative? If the larger is negative, you make it negative. If the larger is positive, you keep it positive. Okay. I'm not sure if you're all bored, or if you're happy you had the review, or if you're just lost and confused. But if you have any comments, please let me know, because I can't tell for sure. You know what I mean? It's one of the things about teaching online is that I don't necessarily see all your faces, happy or sad. But I'll review. And if you ever want me to do more examples, I'll do more examples too. But we're going to do lots of examples, and then we'll get back to the applications, which, guess what? More examples. Okay. Any questions on addition? Any questions on addition? Okay, let's look at sign number subtraction. So we're going to look at sign number subtraction. So this one gets interesting. Okay, if you're subtracting a negative number, then here's the rule. Okay, and by the way, this rule doesn't always work in life, but it works in math. Is 2 negatives make a positive? Okay, so that's the rule in math. Is two negatives next to each other make a positive. Okay, so that's one of the ideas. So let's say we do 3 minus a negative 7. Okay, and then we see we have a minus minus. So what does that mean? Yeah, we turn it into a plus. So that's equal to 3 plus 7. And now I'm hoping you can all tell me what 3 plus 7 is. Even though there's no prereq for the class, I assume that you know how to do it. You are allowed a calculator, but you shouldn't need one. Yeah, that's 10. Any questions on that rule that when you see two negatives next to each other, like that, a minus, a negative, you get a positive? Any questions on that? Okay, so that's a biggie, and that happens a lot, is that you're going to be subtracting a negative, and you do that. Okay, and we'll have some applications today on doing that, especially if you're looking at a width of a rectangle that might come from a uniform distribution or a confidence interval or something like that, then we're going to be using that too, a number minus a negative. Okay. All right, so now that's not the only possible things. We're subtracting and there could be negatives. What if we're doing a negative minus a positive? Well, the nice thing is the same as adding two negatives. So let me do an example. Let's suppose we have negative 6 minus negative 7. I say minus 7. So we have the negative number minus a positive number. So we can rewrite this. This is what I mean by a negative minus positive is adding two negatives. This is the same as negative 6 plus negative 7. In fact, in some circumstances, that's how you define subtraction. Is a subtraction is an addition of the negative number. So that's another way of saying subtraction. Oh, sorry, that's negative 6. Yeah, any questions at all on that? Any questions? All right, let's see if you can continue. Let's see if you get it. Give you a minute or two. Or at least a few seconds. You don't need a whole minute or two, but okay, good, good. I'm seeing some good answers out there. So again, then we're adding, and we're adding two negatives. And when you add two negatives, that means that the first thing you do is you go 6 plus 7. And that's 13. So negative 6 minus or plus negative 7. Keep putting a 7 when I mean a 6. There we go. Is equal to negative 13. Any questions at all on this idea? Any questions? Not too bad, hopefully. Okay, well, I showed you how do you take a positive minus the negative. I showed you how to take a negative minus a positive. Now, what about a negative minus a negative? And the idea is we already know how to do it. So let's see if you can do one. How about negative 11 minus a negative 5? Let's see if you can work this one out. And the idea is you just have to use what we've already seen, but there's two rules you have to use, and hopefully you can get them. Good, good. I'm seeing some good answers, correct answers. So the first thing you do is you say, I got a minus minus. When you got two minuses next to each other, it becomes a plus. So this is equal to negative 11 plus 5. Now we have a negative plus a positive. So we have an addition problem where one is negative, one is positive. And when you have one of each, that means you do the subtraction first, and the bigger number gets its sign. So we can go 11 minus 5 is equal to 6. So that means that negative 11 minus a negative 5 must be equal to -6 because the bigger one is negative, right? 11's got the negative in front of it. Any questions? If I'm going too fast, please let me know. But what I'm trying to do is if I see all of you type in -6, then I figure you're probably getting it. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm hoping so. But if there's any questions, please, please, please let me know. Any questions on subtraction? Okay, so the last piece is, what about two positives? Positive minus a larger positive. Okay, positive. So if we have a positive number and we subtract a larger positive, then what we do is switch, do the subtraction, and make the answer negative. So that would be something like, what if we had 7 minus 8? And let's see if you can tell me what you get based on the rules that I just wrote in. Good, good. So don't forget, so what we do is we switch. 8 minus 7 is equal to 1. And then we switch. We make them negative. So the answer is -1. Any questions at all on subtraction? Unless I missed something, I think that's all the different possible examples of the basic ones. All right, now let me tell you something that is a quirky feature of the TI-84. Let me ask you, any of you have a TI calculator that you're using? 80 or above? Or Inspire counts too? Yeah, yeah. So most of it sounds like you are. Okay. So just to let you know that stats, a lot of it uses a TI, except this quarter. Anyone know why we're not doing a calculator this quarter? For my stats class? No one knows why? Okay, let me tell you. Yeah, everything's online. So I figured if everyone's gonna have a computer in front of them all the time, what I did is I literally computer programmed the TI-84 calculator, or everything the calculator does, and put it online, and I embedded it into my test. But that's not going to stay forever. TI-84 is real common. So, and TI other things, Inspire too. I do want to mention something. I don't want to mention names because it could be private, but if for some reason it's any kind of financial issue to get a TI-84, do you remember what you can do? Do you remember? I don't know if you remember, I said it during orientation. Yeah. What I did is I purchased many, many TI-84 calculators. And I think rent is the wrong word, actually. Borrow is a better word because you don't have to pay, it's free. So there's no reason if you live in Tahoe to buy a TI-84 calculator. Just let you know that. Just don't do that. All you have to do, you have to contact the library, because normally you wouldn't, but now they don't let you in unless you make an appointment because of the whole virus thing. They don't want a lot of people coming at once. But you have to contact the library, and then the library will check you out a TI-84 for the entire quarter for free. You just have to pay, you have to bring it back at the end of the quarter. And that's it. Okay, and by the way, the same thing with computers. If anyone needs a laptop, the library will loan you a laptop for the entire quarter. They still have laptops left to loan out. So I want to mention that you know, definitely there's no reason to pay for one if you live in Tahoe. Okay, if you don't live in Tahoe, then all bets are off. I'd say you could come here, but I don't know if it's legal to come up here. They might arrest you. We're in weird times. But just let you know that you don't have to do that. But I do want to mention something about the TI-84. So this is really confusing, and that is subtraction. So on the TI-84, subtraction and negative are different buttons. Okay, so that's important. I can't show it to you now. I know this sounds weird. The TA84 that I have is, I think it is in the college, and I'm not allowed to go to the college. So, because it's closed. But I have one. And, but just to note, they're different buttons. And if you use the wrong one, then you get an error. So if you get an error, look to see if you use the wrong one. So let me let you know that subtraction is above the plus sign, plus button. And negative is on the bottom row. And I think is to the immediate left of the enter, equal. Okay, so that's something that many students will come to me and say, well, why is my calculator broken? And that's, I'd say 30–40% of the time, that's the problem right there. It's not the calculator's broken, but they're using a subtraction instead of a negative. And then it just says error, gives you all kinds of problems. So that's just a note that this is not a math thing. This is those people in Texas. They've done a good job with the calculator, except for a few things, and this is one of them. Is they should have made that button work either way and understood it, and it could. Trust me, I know how to program. So there's a few things they shouldn't have done, and that's one of them. Is had those separate. So any questions on the TI-84? And again, you could look at your TI-84 and you'll notice that. Any questions at all? Okay. If you're using Google, you don't have to worry about it. So for example, let's see if we can do this. Round about negative 5.432 minus a negative 3.157 to the nearest, or how about two decimal places? Okay, so again, if you have the 84, I would recommend trying it. I don't have it with me, so I can't show it to you, but what I can do is I can show you on the computer. Okay, any questions so far? So Google's really easy. I'm just going to copy it, pop onto a new tab, paste it in the search bar, and there's our answer. Negative 2.27500. Okay. 2.27500. So let's write that out. And now I want to round it to 2 decimal places. Okay. You're close. But remember, it's a negative, so don't forget the negative sign. Yeah, the negative sign is very important. So that rounds to negative 2.28. Any questions at all on this example of using technology? Okay. It's a good idea, by the way, whenever you're doing things, kind of do this in your head a little bit. I just say, oh, I got -5 minus -3. That's the same as negative 5 plus 3. Well, negative 5 is bigger than 3, so it better be negative. Okay, so that's a good just way to check your work, make sure what you have makes sense. Any questions on that? In case you made some typo or something. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Good. It looks like you're all getting it. And the idea is it's very important in stats and also in real life. It's really important in real life to know how to use technology. Okay, that's just a skill that everyone needs to know nowadays, especially in the times where everything is on computer. Because of this, everyone's at home on their computer. Okay, any questions at all on kind of this example? Okay, so let me go down and talk about what we've done. So we've now done addition. We've done subtraction. Now it's time to talk about multiplication and division. So the key with multiplication and division is, let me write this down. Is ignore the minus signs, the negatives. Then do the multiplication. I'm going to write and or division. Then count the number of negative signs. If you get an even number of negatives, leave it alone. So leave it positive. If you get an odd number of negatives, you make your answer negative. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's suppose we have, and what I'm going to do here, I need to do it with math. And we have a fraction. And let's suppose we have negative 4 times negative 1 times negative 2 divided by negative 5 times 6. Let's not make it 6. How about times 8? That's a better one. And I know it's small, so I'm going to make it bigger. Try again. There we go. Okay, and what we want to do is want to come up with this without a calculator. We actually don't need a calculator on this one. So what we can do is we can write down without any of the negatives the same thing. So I'm going to just copy and paste. And I'm just going to get rid of all the negatives. It's not necessarily equal to it, but it makes life easier. Any questions so far? Okay, and now I could do it. I could do some canceling if I want, or I could just multiply on the top and the bottom, and I get 8. Oops, let's fraction. I get 8 over 40, right? 4 times 2 is 8, times 1 is still 8. And then 5 times 8 is 40. What's 8 over 40? Can we reduce that? Yeah, 1 over 5. Okay, now let's count the negatives. Now we're too big. Yeah, their fractions get small, and then I got to change font around. Sorry about that. So let's count our negatives. How many negatives do you see in the original problem? Yeah, 4, which is even. So what does that tell us about our final answer? Yeah, it stays positive. So that means the answer is just 1/5. Any questions at all on this whole odd and even thing? Any questions? Okay, I'm not going to do too many examples of this. This one actually doesn't come up as much in statistics once in a while, but the other two do. Once at a then. Any questions at all on any arithmetic that involve negative numbers? Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about midpoints. So we're going to look at the midpoint. Make that bold because that's the topic. Look at the midpoint. Okay, maybe a midpoint because just one midpoint. So let me write this down. The midpoint of two numbers is the average of the two numbers. Okay. How many of you, or who remembers, if I give you two numbers, how do you find the average? Yeah, add and divide by 2. So I want to let you know this is really, really important, and it's a common mistake people make in stats. Is that let's see, you said it depends on how many the numbers are. Well, with two numbers, there's always 2. So it's add and divide by 2. So it's just a midpoint of 2 numbers. So it's just always divided by 2. But I want to mention something. So if I say find the midpoint of, let's say, -4 and -1, what's wrong with just saying, well, that's going to be, well, -4 plus -1 and divide by 2. So if I do that, and I'm gonna use a calculator, might as well. Add them up, divide by 2. And I get -4.5. What's wrong? What did I do wrong? I'm telling you that's not the answer, by the way. It's not -4.5. So what did I do wrong? Anyone know? And hopefully you know the midpoint of -4 and -1 can't be -4.5. That's not between them at all. But what's the problem here? Any thoughts? Yeah, no parentheses. And this is a common mistake when students enter into a calculator, is that the calculator will do order of operations no matter what. So you must put in parentheses when you're adding and then dividing by 2 if you're using a calculator. And if we do that and we copy and paste into my Google calculator, I like it because it's so easy, I get negative 2.5. And then I can say equals negative 2.5. Any questions at all on finding the midpoint of 2 numbers? Any questions? Always good when you get it right. Always good when you get it right. Any questions at all? Okay, so midpoints are important, and they're important for lots and lots of reasons. So now it's time to get into applications. You know, where do you use these sign number arithmetic? Where do you find midpoints, et cetera, et cetera? Okay, so let's suppose that a distribution is uniform between -7 and -4. Okay, now I don't expect you to know what that means, but here's what I do expect you to be able to do. I expect you to be able to read what I'm about to write. So I'm going to do a drawing, and I'm going to draw a rectangle. And I'm going to label that the base of the rectangle goes from -7 to -4. So let's save it. Oops, that's not what I want. Oh, I know what the problem is. There it is, hidden behind my Zoom window. Here it goes, maybe. Uh-oh. I think Zoom is causing it problems, sorry. We got a problem here. All right, I gotta start again. Yeah, it's called computer issues. Sorry about this. Give me all kinds of issues. Sorry. Where is it? There it is. All right, let's try again. Hopefully it works this time. Didn't. All right, well, I'm gonna do it this way then. Sorry. -7. This will still work. -4. What is the width of this rectangle? So this is a common thing you have to do in stats, is that you're going to be given You're going to be given a rectangle. Sometimes you have to draw it. Sometimes you're going to be given it. And you have to find the width of the rectangle, because it turns out you find the height by taking the width, multiplying by the height, and saying that's equal to 1. Okay. So the width of a rectangle, if you remember, because we've looked at that before, is you subtract, you go the right minus the left. Do you remember that? So you go -4 minus a -7. And if I have -4 minus -7, what happens when you have a minus minus?
Positive.
Yeah, it becomes a plus. You get -4 plus 7. Okay, now we're in the addition idea. So that means when we're adding and one is negative and one is positive, we subtract. 7 minus 4 is equal to 3. And the bigger one gets a sign, so it's really just 3. Any questions on this particular application of statistics? Okay, now comes the next one. This is going to be a little harder. Okay, so a confidence interval for the population proportion of, and I'll just make something up, of those who, actually, let's do this, of the difference between LTCC students, actually between, let's go Sierra Nevada Community College and, or Sierra Nevada College and LTCC students who pass their statistics class was -0.21, comma, -0.17. Okay, so the question, so now the population difference, or the sample difference, is the midpoint of the confidence interval. Find this midpoint. Okay, this comes up in stats a lot. Okay, by the way, if they're both negative, what does that tell you about this difference when you're comparing SNC and LTCC students? So what does it tell you? If they're both negative, what does it tell you about positive? Not quite. We're talking about SNC versus LTCC. Without using those letters, you can't really answer. They're both negative. That means we're subtracting SNC minus LTCC, and we got a negative number. So that means LTCC has a higher success pass rate than SNC. Does that make sense? Because if you get a negative on a subtraction, that means the second number was bigger than the first number. Okay, so that's just a note about what this means. Okay, now let's go find the midpoint. So the midpoint, we just do the definition. So we go negative 0.21 minus, plus negative 0.17 Let's put a parenthesis around that. And then we got to divide by 2. So that's what the midpoint means. I need one more parenthesis. Any questions on finding the midpoint? Okay, you could use machine, but let's do this one by hand because I think it's worth it. So how do you add 2 negative numbers? Remember the rule? Yeah, you leave the sign out of it and then put the sign back in at the end. So what is 21 plus 17? Okay, that's going to be, 0.39. Any questions so far? 3.8, sorry. Got to be careful when reading and then just saying yes. So 0.38. Okay. So that means, and then we got to slap a negative on it. We get negative 0.38 divided by 2. Any questions on that? Okay, ignore the negative for now. And 38 halves is 19. So we have 0.19. Now there's an odd number of negatives because it's just 1. So that means we slap a negative on. And there's your midpoint. Okay. You can also pop it in your calculator because that's a little faster. But you've got to remember the parentheses. I wrote them in, but you have to remember to put them in or the calculator will give you the wrong answer. So if I pop it in, let's check. And there it is, negative 0.19. Any questions at all on this example? Any questions? Okay, let's do another one. This one's going to be a little messier, just let you know. And let's suppose that a hypothesis test was done. To find the difference in the population mean weights of, let's go, cats, kittens, and puppies. Okay. Suppose that the mean difference was -8 ounces. I'm sorry, -8 ounces. And the hypothesized mean difference is what I meant. And the sample mean difference was -10 ounces. If the hypothesized mean difference is the midpoint of the sample mean difference, and the lower bound for the mean difference find this lower bound. Okay, I put a lot of words in here. Okay, But I want to warn you that this is what next quarter is going to look like. You're going to have these very long paragraphs, and you're going to have to read through this and see what they're saying. Okay, you don't right now, today, and this whole quarter, you don't have to know the definition of hypothesis test or some of these others, but you do have to be able to read what it's asking for. That's all. Okay, next quarter, you have to know everything. So just let you know, next quarter is tough. There's a lot of vocabulary. You have to know what all this stuff means. Okay, this quarter, what I'm trying to do is just get you used to hearing the vocabulary and reading it. All right, so what do we do? Well, let me show you. Okay, we can draw a picture. And I'm afraid to go back to that insert because it just messed me up a little while ago, but I'm going to try anyway. So let's take a look. Let's draw a picture before we try and figure out what we want to do. I'm going to draw a picture. And the picture is going to be a number line. It's going to make it a line. I won't put the arrows in, but hopefully you're okay with that. Okay. And what we're told, by the way, is it was, oh, I can't, let me just save and close and look again. This was -8, -10. And we don't know. So let's go ahead and do this again. So now I can mark the -8, -10. And I'm going to mark the lower bound also. And now let's write some stuff in. We don't know the lower bound, so I'm going to give it a letter. X seems to be the math letter. There's -10. Notice -10 is to the left of -8. There's -8. There we go. Okay, so there's our picture. Any questions on the picture? Okay, well, what we know is that -10 is a midpoint between these two numbers. So we know is the distance from -10 to -8 is the same as the distance from X to -10. So to find the distance from -8 to -10, we take -8 and we subtract -10. How many we get? What's -8 minus -10? Yeah, 2. Okay, well, that means that if I want to get to X, I'm going to take -10 and I'm going to subtract 2 because I have to go left 2. So I'm going to take -10 minus 2. And tell me what you get. This is why we spend all that time kind of practicing arithmetic, -12. So we could say as a lower bound, the lower bound for the estimate is -12. Okay, I'm not going to get into why you care that much, but I will tell you this happens in particular in a big way in chapter 10 in the statistics class, which you'll get to. Okay, so -12 is the answer to this. Okay, and that should feel right because -10 is right in between -12 and -8. Any questions at all on this example? Any questions? Okay, so I've given you some examples. You're probably getting tired. Let me give you the next thing that is real important that will happen on every webinar. Any guess?
Secret word.
Yep, secret word time. Oops, I want that to be red. There we go. And the secret word for today is, is average. And that's because the midpoint is the average between the left and the right. So it's the average of the left and the right. So I always try and make the secret word relevant to something, but something that you probably wouldn't have guessed, without watching this webinar. So I am going to stop the share and stop the recording.